Welcome back to EASD TV. Now, much of the focus in research has been on, of course, the pancreas and then adipose tissue, but now attention is turning to the brain. And with me to talk a bit about the research that's going on in the brain and give us a bit of a primer are two research scientists, and let me introduce them to you. One is Peter Thorn from the University of Sydney via the UK, and Sushil Rane from the NIH, which is in Maryland in the US. So welcome to both
Thank
of you.
you.
Let's start with you, Peter, because your area is the beta cell. So tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so the beta cell is the origin of insulin, and insulin is secreted by the beta cells, and they're regulated in a whole complex of different ways. And pretty much all forms of diabetes, there is a problem with the insulin secretion coming from the beta cells. So really, the stand we take is that the more you understand how that secretion is controlled, then the better ideas you're going to have about how to innovate in terms of controlling the disease.
Now, you're looking at the brain, and of course the brain is a complete addict as far as glucose is concerned, so it stands to reason that it must be involved somehow in the secretion of insulin.
Yeah, means so true. Means the beta cells are the end point for making insulin and secreting it. Very, very vital. And what insulin does is control glucose levels, lower glucose levels. So, and it does so in a very exquisitely controlled manner. And that's what keeps our blood glucose levels normal throughout our life until something changes and you have your blood sugar levels going up and down. What's also known, and was known for quite a while, that the brain also has an exquisite interest in glucose, because the brain needs glucose. That's the only fuel the brain can use for its own survival. So it almost made sense for the brain to have some way to control the levels of insulin coming from the beta cell, so that the glucose levels do not go down so far that the brain would not have the fuel to operate. So what we are working on is trying to understand how the brain that tells us how much to eat, when to eat, and how to eat, how is that actually also controlling the beta cell, which makes insulin, which controls glucose.
And of course the brain, the satiety signals go to the brain. I mean, that's, we see a plate of food, there's a whole pathway going on before we've even put a morsel in our mouths.
True. And that's it all feeds into this appetite satiety equation. Like how much is enough, which food has more value to you versus the necessity for it to be eaten. All of that is controlled by regions of the brain, and there are discrete neurons that do that for you, tell you how much to eat, what to eat, what's the value of a certain food item versus the other. And now we're finding out that those regions of the brain also talk to the cells like the beta cells and tell it how much insulin to release and when to release it.
Now, the brain has always been a very inaccessible organ, but lately we've had some new tools that will allow us to have a look in greater detail. And, we've seen these tools used in all sorts of places. I mean, we've heard a lot today about metabolomics, for instance. But what are the tools you're using in the brain?
So, as far as the technology is definitely advancing what we can do. So now we can see the various neurons, figure out where those connections are, how those neurons connected to different cell types, like the beta cell or the alpha cell that makes glucagon, an equally important hormone secreted by the pancreas. So, and then we can go in and activate those neurons or inactivate those neurons, and then look at the consequence for it. And all of this is trying to understand how humans are going to perceive food and how they're going to perceive hunger and satiety. And then all of that comes back down to controlling powerful hormones like insulin and glucagon.
And it gets back to your favorite subject, the beta cells?
The beta cell. So I think what we need to understand is that the beta cells are regulated in a very complex way, and I think we have a pretty clear understanding of how they're regulated by the blood sugars. So glucose will directly control insulin secretion. But when we get to the higher level where we're talking about the control from the brain and control from other systems, that's where we really lack understanding, and that's really where we're working at. So to try and understand how the beta cell integrates all of these signals that are coming into the cell and then regulates the output of insulin, and that's something that we really don't understand very well.
Who is what is, I should say, the air traffic controller?
Exactly. We think it lies within the beta cells, and so what we're doing is trying to understand how the beta cells are picking up all this different sets of information that's coming from all over the place. It comes from the gut as well as the brain, so there are hormones being secreted from the gut that control the beta cell, and they're all integrated at the level of the beta cell, and then that controls
They're integrated, output. But are any of those signals prioritized?
They will, well, I think that most people would consider that glucose is the priority signal, right? So that's the main thing. But on top of that, then we will have various hormones that are regulating the insulin secretion. And then, of course, we've got the neurons as well coming in. They're all being put together by the beta cell, and then that very finely tunes the amount of insulin that is being released from the beta cell, either up or down. And of course, that's really the key mechanism that is going wrong in many forms of diabetes.
So you see where I'm going with this, yes. The brain does the brain kind of countermand everything else? Do its signals?
I would say no, but yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Peter is saying. So I think the priority signal is survival. So means everything is engineered to survive. And survival requires you to have energy to survive, to reproduce. And glucose is clearly the ultimate fuel. So in that case, prioritization for survival happens through controlling glucose levels. And then everything else that controls glucose levels, whether it be the brain or the beta cell, they all kind of fall in tune. So it's all about survival, really, that's being the priority, and glucose is the primary fuel.
Yeah, because you get, in situations of starvation, you get various of the body systems gradually shut down. I mean, reproduction is the first to go. I mean, who needs that?
Right.
And then the immune system goes.
That's right. But
So
that would be an extreme situation. I mean, our normal bodies on a minute by minute basis, all of these factors that we're talking about are changing all the time, and so that's what I'm getting at in terms of integrating all of those kind of things. It's not an extreme situation. It depends on whether we're looking at food, that will have an impact. Whether we've eaten some food will have an impact. What the blood sugars are will have an impact. So there's a whole array of different things that will impact, and that is happening just normally in the way that we live, right?
So you've got this whole session. Where do you think the research in this area is going? What are the big unanswered questions here?
Well, for me, I mean, you alluded to this with the brain, and for me, really, the exciting areas are new technologies. And so there's really fantastic technologies that are allowing us to look inside the beta cell, kind of open the hood on how it is integrating all of these systems together and really understand that. And a lot of those technologies are imaging technologies like they have in the brain, and also ability to genetically manipulate the systems and really understand the deep mechanisms behind how the beta cell is actually working.
What are the unanswered questions for you?
Yeah, it's the same. I think trying to figure out how you can extrapolate all of this information that's coming through to humans, and how we perceive hunger, satiety, and how that whole machinery that exists is then going to be controlled, and how are you going to be able to tweak it in terms of pathogenesis, in terms of diabetes, because clearly that machinery could be hijacked, in the setting of diabetes. Question is, first you need to understand it, and then you can figure out a way to kind of tackle it and figure out how you could maybe manipulate it for better. So
obviously we always say that there will be an impact in diabetes care, but actually this is curiosity driven research. And can I just give a plea here for the Blue Skies research in its insulin and glucose control, because it's from these curiosity-driven questions that you get the next generation of understanding of drugs.
Definitely, and within this field there are great examples of that. So our understanding of the beta cell has led to many of the drugs that are now being used. Understanding of a hormone called GLP-1, which came from basic science, is now a key treatment in type 2 diabetes. So yes, it's definitely the precursor to treatments. Yeah.
Well, thank you both, and hurrah for basic science. There'll be more on EASD TV really soon.